everybody, and welcome to a very impromptu eating at a meeting conversation. I am here with my friend David T. Stevens to my left, and we're here to talk about an event he and I participated in back in October during IMEX. It was called Beyond the Bar.
It was at Jimmy Kimmel's Comedy Club.
Right. Very cool thing.
Does October feel like it was forever ago, or is it just me?
It does. No, it does. It feels like more than 2 months ago. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess it's actually the beginning of October, right? So it's like 3 months.
Yeah, it's almost 3 months ago. Yeah. Yeah, it does. But the conversation that we had is really good. And I really wanted to have this conversation with you today because it's the kickoff of the new year. Everybody will be partaking in beverages this evening, but also tomorrow kicks off Dry January. So I wanted to have this conversation with you to recap what Beyond the Bar was and the importance of it and the conversation that we had. So tell everybody who you are as host of Return on Wellness. What is that?
Yes. So I am David T. Stevens. I'm the host of Return on Wellness, which is a web series that focuses on the business value of integrating wellness into your corporate meetings and events. So while doing wellness events isn't our primary focus, we'd be happy to do them, but we focus on leveraging wellness as a strategy and integrating that holistically into corporate meetings and events so that you see a higher return from your attendees.
Nice. Awesome. And kind of in line of, I like that wording you had. I'm going to borrow it a little bit of it and what I do. I mean, it's the same thing. It's like finding the value in focusing on your attendees so that they can participate fully, whether they have a dietary need or, as this conversation is about, don't drink alcohol. Right.
I mean, I'm sure we probably could have called it biohacking, but that's, I don't know. That's just really a marketing term, and I'm not a big fan of that term in particular, but we're just doing the things that enable people to learn more so that all the time you spent planning and organizing that event actually sticks. Right.
And that's a novel idea, right? And the money that and the time that you spent planning it. So let's explain Beyond the Bar, and I probably have a graphic somewhere of it, but it was a panel discussion which you moderated at the Jimmy Kimmel Comedy Club in Las Vegas during IMEX.
And that I did a terrible 5-minute monologue at.
I was in the back, so I didn't hear it. So I can't attest to
Congratulations.
That.
You're very lucky.
But it is in our video, so I probably could listen to it.
Yeah, it's in there. I left it in there just to remind myself of if I ever get to do it again, hopefully it will be much better, and then I can compare the two and learn some things.
Well, and also the reason I also am doing this today is that whole thing, the whole presentation is now live on the Eating at a Meeting podcast. So your monologue is now part of the yes, it kicks it off. So.
Well, I'm a trained meeting professional, not a trained stand-up. So, and there were no cue cards either. So it was
there were not.
It was rough, but it's okay.
You did pretty well, I'm sure. Okay. So yes, it is on the Eating at a Meeting website now and podcast. You can download it on Apple and Spotify, etc. I will put the link to the website, the podcast episode right here in the chat. But okay, so it was called Beyond the Bar, and it was you and me and Alyssa Hart and Madeline
Oliveria,
and then Carl Radke.
Yes.
And we were talking about the benefits, the financial and social benefits of incorporating non-alcoholic beverages into our event bars. That's the basis of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the way it was branded summed it up pretty well. It was designed to be a, quote, sober, inclusive happy hour.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yep. And go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that positioned it really well because it was not a dry happy hour. It was a sober, inclusive happy hour.
Right. And because out of all of us, 4 of us don't drink, but you are the only one that does.
Yes.
Right. So you were including us in this conversation. Yeah.
Well, I guess, it's one of the terms that's floating around now is sober curious.
Hmm.
And I felt it was important to have someone on the panel who does drink from time to time, have a
Hmm.
conversation with people who don't about how
Hmm.
to help ensure that they feel included in the events we
Hmm.
organize, because that was really the intention of that entire endeavor, was to, how do we build and design events that make people feel like they're a part, that makes everyone feel like they're a part of the event,
Right.
and doesn't leave a certain community feel, it doesn't leave them feeling left out.
Right. Well, and the I'm saying hello. Okay, I'm looking over here at Instagram because we're on live on Instagram too. And so we've got Table Set Go and Goddess Rag, Site India, and Sharacam. So
Hi,
thanks for
everybody.
joining us.
I mean, we were really just talking about the fact that we had someone who does drink have a
Right.
conversation with people who don't drink for various reasons, because it doesn't
Hmm.
matter what the reason is, about how to make them feel included as part of the event.
Hmm. Yep.
Because I think one of the things that I noticed is, as someone who doesn't always want to drink, when I go somewhere and I'm not in the mood to drink, or I don't want to, or for whatever reason, and things are missing and there's nothing really there for me, I tend to leave those events.
Hmm. And you did
And
leave one of our industry events because of that.
yeah, and I had actually a conversation with Alyssa, who was on the panel prior to that.
Hmm.
And she was like, oh, yeah, all they had was Topo Chico. So I drank enough of it. I feel like I have a Topo baby.
Totally.
Y- Yeah. So I think
Yeah.
that it was really exciting to just have a real candid conversation about how to ensure that people feel included and not othered, right? Because
Right. Hmm.
when you have a group of people who attend your event that feel like they haven't been thought about or
Hmm.
accommodated for, they tend to check out. And
Yes.
that undermines the base objective of the event. I mean, unless you're going for something that's designed to be exclusive feeling, and you still don't want to leave people out who don't drink.
Right. Well, and you want everybody to fully participate as they can, and you also want to give the people who maybe are drinking but want to stagger it with a non-alcoholic beverage in the middle of it, right? To help them stay through the event the whole time, right? And not get so drunk off their rear ends that they can't function because they're there for business or networking of some sort, right? Or even socializing. I mean, it should be for socializing as well, not necessarily building business, but just making new friends.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why we do all of this, right? We put
Right.
on meetings and events to bring people together.
Mhm.
And what happens when the event we spoke about earlier, I went to the opening reception, and the idea was you were supposed to go around to the different booths and see all the new products and blah blah blah. And they had nothing but fried foods and a bar that was alcohol, and the only non-alcoholic thing they had was like sparkling. It was beer and wine, and they didn't even have non-alcoholic beer. And then they had sparkling water, and that was it. And their objective was undermined by their bar, because I was hungry, I was thirsty. They didn't have water, like regular water. And so I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm going to
It was
go.
probably in a water cooler over in a corner.
Oh, could be. But I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm going to go, and I'm not going to see any of the booths that they wanted me to see. And then I ended up bonding with the other people that I left with, because there wasn't anything there for us. And so
Hmm.
instead, what we did is we bonded over commiserating about talking trash about the event, as
Which
opposed
is
to
not
us
good.
all spending time with each other at the event, talking about the cool things we're seeing.
Right. Exactly. And yeah, because the event is bringing you there to be there and participate, and all those people who spent tons of money to have you come look at their booth now are not having you and what, four other people not look at
Right.
their booth.
And we're just one group, right? There's
Hmm.
probably others.
Right. Yeah. So what was your biggest takeaway about Beyond the Bar?
I think it's probably what Carl said. And Carl, because he said it so succinctly, he was talking about, so he owns a bar called Soft Bar. So they don't
Mm-hmm.
serve any alcohol at Soft Bar. And he said he was interviewing the bartender. Was it like 11 Madison Park, I think?
Maybe. I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. And because he was going to have him come work for him as well. And he said he was making him a non-alcoholic drink at the bar at 11 Madison Park. And he
Mm-hmm.
said, Carl, just because you're not drinking alcohol doesn't mean you deserve any less of the experience of someone who is drinking alcohol. Because you think back to those smoked cocktails and like all the
Mm-hmm.
accoutrement and like all the different fanfare that they do around the cocktail. When you get a mocktail, it's like in a plastic cup, like you're a kid.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason you can't have that same experience for someone who doesn't drink alcohol. That was my biggest thing that really summed it all up, because what we're trying to do is ensure the attendee experience is even for everyone, regardless of if there happens to be alcohol in your drink or not.
Right. Well, and it made me think of a restaurant I was at the other day, and it's very, very similar to that. But I ordered water, and they're like, okay, well, the water cup is over there by the machine, and the water cup is this big. And then the soda cup that they give everybody else, or the tea cup, is this big. So why do I only get this much water, and then I have to go up multiple times? Why can't I get the bigger cup for my water? I mean, why?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting. There's got to be some psychological study behind it that hasn't been done yet, I'm sure, on how it feels to hold a different type of cup
Mm-hmm.
than everyone else, right? And
Right.
I think that was one of the other things that came up in the discussion, is the fact that on the IMEX show floor, there were brands who were serving their zero proof elixirs in martini glasses next to the martini glasses with the alcohol, so that everyone felt like they were holding the same thing. And there was
Mm-hmm.
others who were doing things in plastic cups, or if you go to an event and they're like, oh, you're getting the non-alcoholic beverage, and it's in like a different kind of glass than the fun stemware that they're using for the
Right.
alcoholic glass drinks.
Right.
So it was there's something to that. And Carl talked about this with his can design, was that he made the cans the exact same size for both the alcoholic version of it and the non-alcoholic version of it, so that everyone felt like they were holding the same thing.
That's awesome. Well, reminds me of this glassware maker out of Charleston, and I need to find her and share it. But she makes this beautiful custom designed glassware and all cake plates and all of that stuff. But it's like multicolored champagne glasses or multicolored things. So like you could get it like everybody else has the red glass if you're getting one with alcohol in it. And then the people without alcohol in it get the blue glass, the blue crystal. I mean, it's the same type of glass, but it's a different color. So then your bartenders know, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But nobody else would know.
I think the whole thing is, there's a lot of people who don't drink that don't want to have a discussion about why they don't drink.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And by giving people something that feels the same as everyone else, they potentially don't have to have that conversation.
Right.
And because they don't have to, they don't need to, there's no reason for them to, like,
right.
It's no one's business but their own.
Right.
And when you can do something that makes everyone feel like they're just part of the event, then it's one less thing that makes that person feel like they have to, because they might not drink for a very personal reason that they're not comfortable sharing with people, or maybe they just don't like to. But either way, nobody wants to talk about it.
Right. Nobody wants to talk about it. And it's even, you can tie that back to people who have food allergies or other celiac disease. I'm like, they don't want to talk about how many times they're in the bathroom because they ate something that has gluten in it. I mean, same thing. You don't want to talk about maybe you don't drink because your family members were alcoholics and you saw what that did to your family, or maybe you're an alcoholic and you have now stopped drinking. It doesn't matter, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not something that's not the networking question people want to answer.
Right. Exactly. They want to answer the typical thing. Where are you from? What do you do? Right? How do I make business? Or like, can we bond over? I mean, maybe you will bond with somebody because they don't drink, right? But that's a conversation that the two of you can have in a variety of different ways. But okay, that company is called Estelle Colored Glass. And
Fun.
if I'm going to put the link in here because it's stunning glassware. She designed it based on what she saw in her grandmother's cabinet a long time ago.
Oh.
And during COVID, she went over to Poland and found somebody to make it. But it's like she's got green and yellow and brown and blue and purple and burgundy. And like, so make the non-alcoholic ones blue and yellow and the alcoholic ones red and green or whatever. Right. Yeah. So there's a whole mixture of it and not too complicated. Okay. So at the very beginning of this, as you introduced yourself, you said the business and the business behind this, right? On wellness and showing this. I mean, we talked about some different stats. I know Carl mentioned it. And then I also mentioned some as well on the benefits of doing this. It's not just for the sake of being the nice person in doing this. There is some financial opportunity for a hotel company, catering company to do this, as well as for a meeting planner to introduce it and offer it. Do you remember of any of those stats off the top of your head? I have some examples.
Well, yeah, I remember the staggering number of the fact that 38% of the adult population in the United States doesn't drink.
Right.
That's creeping up on half the people at your event don't drink.
Right.
That's a significant amount of people. And if they don't drink, they're one of the things I think was interesting about what Alyssa shared was she's like, well, you're just kind of expecting to not have anything. She's like, you're just kind of constantly othered. You're just overlooked, not seen. I'll survive. It's my choice for whatever reason. So they didn't accommodate for me. To me, that told me there's an opportunity for what we love to do, which is surprise and delight. So if you look at the numbers, 38% of adults in the United States don't drink. That means there's a large chunk of the population who's used to being othered and just kind of overlooked and dismissed and know when they show up, they're going to essentially struggle at your event. So by adding something that is fun and inclusionary and non-alcoholic, you have now potentially not just met those people where they're at, 38% of your audience potentially, but you're actually surprising and delighting them because they're like, oh my God, this is great. They'll feel excited.
Yeah.
Like you're not even, it's going from negative to full positive, not negative to neutral, right?
Right.
You actually get that opportunity to flip them into a fan because you're ensuring they feel seen. So that was one big stat. I think another big stat that I heard was something like 94% of all drinkers are also non-drinkers.
Right.
That means 6% are.
Yeah, they are.
Have a problem. Everyone drinks non-alcoholic drinks at any given time. And then some people also drink, but 94% of drinkers are also non-drinkers.
Right, exactly. And I mean, and that kind of is an example in my household here too. I mean, my mom still drinks, but my dad doesn't. So my mom's the buyer, the purchaser. So even though she still drinks, we're buying Spiritless or we're buying Ritual gin or whatever for my dad and for me. So our household is split 2-1, actually, based on what we drink in our household. So it's like 94% of people of the purchases of non-alcoholic beverages are made by people who still consume alcohol. And then the other stat with your 38% is that like 40+ percent of millennials or Gen Zs have never had alcohol. Those of the drinking age have never had alcohol. So if
Never.
you're a large contingency, right, never. And if you're a large contingency, if your attendee base is a large contingency of them, are you just going to sit there and throw out, here's your beer, here's your gin and whatever, and expect them? And especially, and so let's talk about numbers there. I'm like, depending on what type of bar you're having, you're a meeting planner and you're going to say, okay, well, I'm just going to do an open bar. And you're going to pay what, 20, 30, 40, $50 per person for, I think it for per hour for everybody to drink. I'm like, and then you need to go back and look at your consumption reports and see what did get consumed. And if you just paid that much money per person and they only drink soda or water, you just got ripped off.
Yeah. Well, Madeline brought up is that they would have their women at Amazon events,
right?
And they would have beer and wine, and no one would touch it.
Mm-hmm.
And they were paying these bartenders, and they were paying to have beer and wine at their events, and it was completely going untouched. And they're like, "Oh, I guess we don't need to have this anymore," because I was talking with someone about this yesterday. Just how kind of, if you really pause and think about it, how crazy the concept of a post-work happy hour is. It's like, hey, let's get everyone together after a long day at work, have a few drinks, and then tell everybody to drive home.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Naomi just piped in here. I went to an event this summer in LA, and a speakeasy was part of the group that wanted non-alcoholic option. There was a great server who said, okay, pick a word and I'll surprise you. People chose things like spicy, smoky, fruity, floral, herbal, and the results were delightful and joyful. I felt connected with everyone. There was a result of sharing that creative moment. Oh, I love that, Naomi. Thank you. Oh. And even actually at IMEX, Hard Rock did their event in the hosted buyer lounge. And so Naomi, similar to that is like you picked your favorite type of music. And
it was like a song. So you picked a song on Spotify, and it would craft you a cocktail with or without alcohol. That was your choice.
Right. Based on the type of music.
Based on your song. Yeah.
Yeah.
Super cool. That company, that was Hard Rock who brought them in, but that company is a standalone company that you can hire at virtually any event.
That's awesome.
And it works with the hotel because they buy all the ingredients and it's all done with a robot. It's all AI driven, and a robot makes the drinks, but you buy all your ingredients from the hotel. So they're not feeling, you're still working towards your F&B minimum. You're not bringing in outside beverages, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Corkage fee, all of that stuff. Yeah.
Right. You buy all your ingredients from the hotel, and then they just stock their robot with the liquids, I guess. The liquids from the hotel.
The liquids. Yeah. And it was really cool. I can probably find some photos, but it was a really cool concept. And some people were like, what? There's no bar. I'm like, no, you had to go up to this thing and experience. So there is another thing of communicating or sharing that concept, because there was just one, which is fine. But it was a fun engagement, surprise and delight.
Yeah. Right? Well, and the fact that you could just choose, alcohol free versus alcohol. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing is like, it can be kind of a communal. Like if a group walks up to the kiosk, everyone gets to pick their favorite song and they all see it and whatnot. And then they all watch it being made in the machine. So it was highly experiential and super fun.
Right. Naomi just says she's got to go, but thank you for bringing to the delight of personalization into this conversation. That is
Happy New Year's, Naomi.
Happy New Year to you too. And the one thing that the word personalization is in the MPI end of year, like what's our forecast for 2025? That's actually was my word. I'm like, there is going to be so much more personalization and premiumization. It's a hard word to say in 2025. Premiums.
Yeah.
And how do you do that? You surprise and delight. You make sure that everybody's got what they need and fully participate.
Nestle's food and beverage report from 2025, or 2024. I don't know if you've seen it yet or not.
Maybe I have,
but there's two big things that came out of it was personalization and non-alcoholic beverages. Those were like two of the 5 hottest trends for 2025. is it, and so what that made me think about, I wrote an article about it, is doing like a customizable hydration bar where
Mm-hmm.
you have water, you have sparkling water so that people can choose if they want still. You have a bunch of different kinds of fruits or maybe some sugar-free syrups or things of that nature. You maybe have some salts or electrolytes so that people can add as much as they choose, but like creating an actual hydration station that's
Mm-hmm.
customizable. And then you're hitting two of those needs right on the head, right? People can choose what they want, and
Mm-hmm.
you're also able to meet that demand of people who are interested in non-alcoholic beverages.
And what a novel idea, right? It's the and just kind of also on that same note there too is that when we're looking at the finances of this, right? We talked about Madeline said that they found out they were wasting all of that money, but on the flip side too is like, what if you have a food and beverage minimum? I mean, and it depends on where you stand on food and beverage minimum. Some people, planners, like to keep their food and beverage minimum high to meet that. Others like want to negotiate it all the way down to go over to however you want to meet it, right? And that will probably change a little bit going into 2025 as well, maybe. But what if you could spend, instead of relying on $5 sodas, you instituted that non-alcoholic beer or that non-alcoholic cocktail at that higher price point, right? You as a meeting planner are going to meet your food and beverage minimum faster while also customizing and offer that premium experience for those attendees.
Yeah. And I think you're touching on something that we talked about at the event as well, which was the cost of
Mm-hmm.
non-alcoholic beverages versus the cost of alcoholic beverages. And something that was interesting that Carl brought up is that they actually spend more on producing their non-alcoholic line
Mm-hmm.
because there's nothing to mask. There's no alcohol to mask any of the flavors. So they have to
Mm-hmm.
use really good ingredients because you can taste everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for people that are, I had this conversation with someone yesterday as well. We were talking about, should non-alcoholic beverages be the same price as alcoholic beverages? And I think it's kind of a mixed bag. I think if you were doing something that is not using a zero proof spirit, then theoretically it should probably be cheaper because
Right.
it's probably some lime juice or lemon juice or maybe a little bit of pineapple juice or whatever. It's probably some type, maybe a little puree, but it's going to mostly be sparkling water or something of that nature because otherwise
Mm-hmm.
you're getting a smoothie. Whereas if you're adding that free spirits, bourbon or something of that nature, then I see that as a true, let's call it mocktail, because it's pretending to be a cocktail in all
Mm-hmm.
fairness, but that you have to buy that bottle of that zero proof spirit. So I
Mm-hmm.
can see it making sense that those are the same price. But I think if you're doing fresh, bright, calorically conscious, zero proof beverages or soft cocktails, I don't know that they need to be as expensive as a regular alcoholic beverage.
I mean, there is, like, if you're curating a beverage, right? You're curating a drink. There does take some mixing and matching, and there's some expense in that and trying to figure out how it works. I get that. I don't want you to give me, like, one bartender put at an event in South Carolina mixed Shasta with cheer wine and called it a mocktail. I'm like, no, you can have this back. Thank you very much. I don't want that because that is not caloric. It's not happy. It's just sugar. And then I had one the other night and I was all excited about it. I said, I want some ginger, and he had ginger beer. And then he's like, oh, I topped it off with some Coca-Cola to make it look like a dark and stormy. And I'm like, I was excited about it when I looked at it. And then when he said that, I was totally turned away. He only charged me $5 for it. So I was okay with that. But I didn't even finish it because I'm like, I didn't want Coke. I didn't
Yeah.
ask for soda. Right.
I mean, I respect him trying to be
Right.
creative and
Yes.
having fun with it, but I mean, how did it taste?
I mean,
Okay.
it was just at the top, but I mean, I'm also not a fan of, I know I'm not at a restaurant that's going to have fresh ginger juice.
Right.
They were using ginger beer, which is got some of them have some high sugar content in them, but
Yeah.
I'm all about my ginger. I love ginger for the gut health and the flavor.
Oh, and we have our own signature drink for our organization,
Oh, you
and
do? I need to
we
do
do.
that.
It's called the Olympian,
Okay. Of course.
and it's less than 25 calories. It's
Wow.
lime, pineapple, a splash of simple syrup, backfilled with soda water over ice.
Okay. See, you lost me at the pineapple. I'm not a fan of that, but
Well,
that's okay.
yeah,
But that's my
I
choice, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
I had a server down at a restaurant in the Caribbean who made it for me, and I was like, "Why isn't
Okay.
this on the menu?" It was in a like nice big glass with a lime wedge on the edge and a sprig of mint. Oh, it's muddled with cucumber and mint as well.
Okay.
And there's a sprig of mint in it and the lime wedge, and it's like kind of soft, bright yellow, and it was
Hmm.
delicious. It was refreshing. It wasn't too sweet, and I was like, "What? Why isn't this on the menu?" He's like, "I don't know." I said, "Well, I'm going to take this recipe." He goes, "All right, cool."
Well, and I
I've
hate,
recreated it
but
many
I
times,
love
and it's
cucumbers
delicious.
in drinks. Yeah. Yeah. I can't stand eating cucumbers, but I love them in drinks.
But it's like 25 calories for the whole
That's
thing,
awesome. That's
and
fantastic.
and that's all it needs to be. I mean, at South
Okay.
by Southwest last year, LaCroix had an entire bar that didn't have a single alcoholic beverage on it. But
Wow.
because they have so many flavors of sparkling waters, they
Hmm.
could make all these alcohol-free cocktails
Right.
that were under 20 calories.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And they're refreshing. They're not,
Yeah,
yeah. They want you to have another one, which is a good thing, right? Um, and enjoy it and tap a glass. Here's cheers to that drink.
exactly.
Okay. Any other? I'm looking at my show notes from that episode, and one of the quotes here, and it kind of goes back to what you said a few minutes ago. This is from Alyssa. Non-alcoholic beverages should be more than just alternatives. They should provide a whole experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's like what
Yeah.
we were talking about before.
Yeah.
Like
Hmm.
regardless of if there's alcohol in your cup or not,
Right.
you should get the same experience everyone else does.
Yeah. And then on the same kind of similar note too, as Carl said, offering non-alcoholic options helps break the stigma and promotes inclusivity.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, we could talk about this forever because you and I are on this, but today is New Year's Eve. You just described your cocktail, your non-alcoholic beverage, and it is the start of tonight at 12:01 is the start of Dry January. So, but over and above just sticking in January, what do you want? What are your wishes and wants from hotel? And I'm going to say it's just the events side of our hotels and convention centers. I'm going to say that there's probably some well, I know some hotels that don't do it, but the restaurant side might have a bartender that's capable of making a non-alcoholic mocktail, right? Whereas the bar side, the event side of that, there's not. So what
Yeah.
what do you want to say?
Well, I think this is the same reason our agency exists.
Mm-hmm.
There's no shortage of corporate wellness programs,
Right.
but when they do a corporate event, it seems to all go out the window.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of the same thing that tends to happen with banquets at hotels. You can go downstairs and experience a great, enjoyable, zero proof soft cocktail at the bar. And then you ask the banquets team, "Hey, can I get that at ours?" And they're like, "No, we don't do that."
Right.
Well, but you're in the same building. How do you not have the same offerings across the board? So to me, it's kind of this parallel path that I don't know why we're struggling so much to get the bars or restaurants at hotel properties to be more integrated with banquets.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and I'm going through this struggle right now with a venue, is they get so ingrained and comfortable with their rinse and repeat, especially if
Mm-hmm.
the CSM's been there for like 10 years or more. They just tend to get a little like, anytime you want to do something different, they're like, "Oh, I don't think we can do that." And
Right.
no, you can do it. You just don't want to do it
Right.
because you just kind of want to trudge through it and check the box, whatever. I get it. But I think that's why it's good for people to move around from properties and change jobs and whatnot,
Mhm.
because it gives them a fresh perspective. So that being said, I want to see banquets up leveled to include the offerings that the property has as a whole. That's what I want to see in 2025. I'm not a dry January.
Mhm. And just for the fact that I don't drink in general, but
Well, yeah, you're dry annually.
right.
Um, it's just because to me, it's like I honestly I don't drink enough that I feel that I necessarily need a full
Mhm.
month off. But I think regardless of if you're doing an event and people are doing dry January or not, because your bar offering should be the same in January as it should be in February.
Yes,
So if you're making the efforts to think through your menus, to push to your hotels what you're looking for, just make those requirements standard for the rest of the year.
exactly. All right, here's James Flitz. When I worked in hotels, if a customer asked me for mocktails and banquets, I do it 100%. Probably batch create them like other high-end cocktails we make. Sometimes cost becomes the question more than anything else. That's a good that's a good point. But I'm also thinking like, okay, a bottle of spiritless or a bottle of ritual. Hey, mom, how she left. I could ask her how much a bottle of ritual costs. But I think it's like $36 for a bottle of ritual. And which is a non-alcoholic gin or whatever, right? I mean, that's the same bottle, the same cost as a bottle of Tito's, the same quantity of that. So why can't you hold
Yeah, I'm
that
looking at
on?
I'm looking at free spirits and they're
Right,
$35 a bottle.
right. So, and when you're calculating out, I mean, because, okay, let's now go to a bar in Las Vegas that you're going to go buy a table, right? You're going to calculate it out, which I don't do because I can't afford this bottle of tequila, this bottle of whatever it is, vodka. It's what, $700 a bottle for that table.
No. It's like $700 for a 6 pack of Coronas at a table in Vegas. A bottle is usually 1,500.
Right. So correcting me. Okay, sorry. All right. And James just said I wouldn't charge more than Tito's, but sometimes people expect them to be so cheap. 100% agree because they don't understand the curation of that too.
James,
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard what we were talking about earlier, James. So Tracy and I were on a panel, and one of the gentlemen who was on the panel has a non-alcoholic beverage line. And he says it actually costs him more to produce the non-alcoholic beverage line because they have to use better ingredients because there's no alcohol to cover or mask any of the taste. So if they use cheap or crappy ingredients, it's going to taste cheap or crappy. So they have to spend more on non-alcoholic beverages to ensure that the ingredients are good and that kind of thing. So I think there's this, oh, well, alcohol is expensive, so non-alcoholic should be dirt cheap. Well, not necessarily. There's
Right.
effort and there's the quality of the ingredients that go into it. But I totally hear you, sir.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, we do. I'm like, and actually, the restaurant here in town that has the best non-alcoholic beverages. I mean, and they have a little, like, they put a little sprig next to it saying this one can be made non-alcoholic. They knock $4 off the price of the regular drink of the alcoholic drink to give me the non-alcoholic version. I'm like, that's cool. I mean, it's still like $11. I mean, I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
I don't want to, I'm not, my friend Kate Faulkner from Zero Proof Collective actually said too, that why won't you charge me? Do you not value my dollars? Like, I want to spend the money on this drink. I want to be a, all right, James, just overall blended cost makes it probably okay to charge one price for all craft cocktails, alcohol and non-alcoholic. So, okay, so that has a question for you. I mean, maybe I can give you the link and you can pop in here and have join us in this call too. But so are you batch making old fashions or are they making the old fashions? I mean, I don't know how many people are making old fashions at a event bar.
Well, I went to a site event where it was sponsored by Free Spirits. So they were making old fashions with Free Spirits bourbon,
Mm-hmm.
which is the zero proof bourbon, but they were making them one at a time. But I'm guessing I would be fine if they were batch making like the base and then doing their final touches to
Right.
it. That
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
totally fine. That doesn't bother me at all. Because like, for example, that drink I was talking about, the Olympian, I would
Hmm.
expect them to batch make the pineapple, lime, etc.,
Right.
and
Hmm.
then they just fill up the bottom third of the glass over ice, backfill with
Right.
sparkling
Yeah.
water,
Hmm.
garnish, serve. Totally
Right.
fine. That'd be
Yeah.
totally good. I have no problem with that.
Exactly. Right. And he did pipe in whatever you said and said, I can understand that. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't remember what that was answer to, but yes. We just want to make sure that there's options here. We want to make sure that there.
You said it before we started the call. And yes, and I was
Mhm.
joking around. I had a call with Smart Meetings yesterday for an article, and I said, yeah, I think I might just start calling it the yes and bar.
Mhm.
You don't have to lose the alcohol.
Right.
It's not about losing the alcohol or forcing people not to drink. It's just about providing something for the people that don't want to drink. That's it.
Yeah.
It is a yes and. It is not
Mhm.
a either or.
Well, and then tying on to that is going back to what Madeline said too, is like she looked at what was being consumed, right? Like
Yeah.
don't pay by drink, right? Don't pay by person, right? Pay by actual consumption, not like here's the bar. I don't want to figure it out. I mean, make me stand there and look and count how much vodka was actually consumed and whatever. I want to know that because then you're going to know. Hey, do I really need to serve vodka, or am I just going to serve beer and wine, right?
Right.
Why figure out what people are actually consuming and pay for that?
Yeah.
All right. I need to get you back on this show, James. Or the people that want to go back and forth. Sometimes people want to mix and match over the
Yeah,
wine.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, we've talked
100%.
about that too. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and I had an event this summer, and we had athletic beer on the bar, and I was standing talking to the bartender, and this guy had no idea who I was, that I was meeting planner. And he's like, oh, I'm so glad that you have this athletic beer here because I've got to keep up with all these people. And this event, people were in the bar until 2 a.m. And so he's like, I am staggering my beer with regular beer with an athletic beer because I want to make sure that I'm staying on par with them for the rest of the night. So,
Yep.
100%, and they're making money at it. So
Yeah.
both people are making money, the hotel and the event. So
Yeah.
okay, thank you, sir, for my impromptu conversation. Let's see. Oh, yeah, for my impromptu conversation for eating in the meeting and return on wellness because you piped this into your feed as well. So thanks very much.
Yeah.
Um,
I just had a new episode come out today. Actually, I sat down, with Don Berger, who's the guy who started Social Tables. I met him up on his home turf in Boise. I don't know that I necessarily agree with him, but I know he feels very, very strongly about alcohol at events. He's like, there's no place for alcohol at events. And I'm like, that's a hot take. Okay. He's like, there's too much liability. There's too many opportunities
mhm.
for something to go wrong. You're really just asking for problems. And I was like, oh, okay, well, welcome to America where everyone is entitled to their opinion. And I respect it. And I don't completely disagree with him, but I think it's really about moderation as opposed to anything absolute.
100%. And there was, and James, I'm going to put your comment up here in a second, an event I did when I was in corporate years ago. And I was actually, my company was exhibiting at this convention. And the next morning, after one of the on the show floor receptions, the meeting planner for the convention's like, hey, Tracy, let me tell you the story about what happened last night. And this woman came in and she registered for just day of, and she was drinking the margaritas that were being served. And she fell into the fountain. And I'm like walking down the hall with her going, please don't be one of my people. Please don't be one of my people. Please don't be one of my people. And it was one of my people, but not somebody that had registered through me. She was local, and so she came in. But then again, and she literally fell in the fountain at the Gaylord, split her head open. One of our competitors pulled her out of the fountain and took her to call 911, et cetera. And I'm like, I have to do that right thing. And I'm like, hey, this is what I tell my my chief people officer, like, hey, this is what happened, Mike. And she ended up losing her job.
Yeah.
But the responsibility of that too is like when you have 5 bars in a trade show floor, not those bartenders aren't paying attention to how many drinks you had.
Right. Agreed. Yeah. It's the client I have a program with coming up. They only do beer and wine. at their events.
Mhm.
There's a story. I have not heard the story, but when we had the discussion about what we wanted to offer at the evening functions, they're like beer and wine only. That's it. I said, okay, you got it. And they said there's a story behind it. And I was like, okay. I'm like,
Mhm.
I haven't heard the story, but maybe I'll hear it on site. I don't know. But either way, yeah. And then to me, that's striking that balance, right? Because then
Right.
people can make their own choices.
Yeah. But we also have to make sure that our catering teams have this training, their teams are trained to
Yes.
watch
Agreed.
and tips training and all of that. So James piped in, Monique Studak did a great session at NACE this year on non-alcoholic and sober curious. All right, I want to talk to her. That would be awesome. And then he also said, there is a great episode of How I Built This about athletic brewing. Really enjoyed that product story. Thanks. I'll look that up.
They also got a major fitness influencer and a 5-time CrossFit athlete or a CrossFit
You
champion.
sponsoring them?
No, no, no. I'm 6 times. Thank you very much. But I'm also only in my category. But the guy who won the CrossFit Games he won it 5 years in a row. His name's Matt Frazier. He promoted the heck out of them on his socials. But in all fairness, if it was terrible, it wouldn't have worked. So the thing is, they have a good product and they got the right amount of awareness. And so I've seen them multiple times in multiple hotels all over the country, and it's great. Love it.
Yeah. It's fantastic. I don't drink beer because I'm allergic to yeast. So,
Right.
Because I was a Bud Light girl for a long time.
I did hear, I spoke to someone. I'm going to try to get their person on the podcast next year. And if I do, I'll let you know. The winemaker I talked to, I was at a Teneo summit and I met with a woman from a large alcohol distributor. And we had a conversation about non-alcoholic wine and how bad it is. And she's like, well, we have a new Prosecco that we're working on. It's coming out soon. It's about to start being beta tested and whatnot. And I asked her if we could potentially get the winemaker on the show to talk about why they're even bothering with it and why it's worthwhile and et cetera, et cetera. So, but the fact that they're making the efforts says the market's shifting, let alone there's an article from like the World Health Organization that's changing what is considered a healthy amount of alcohol or an acceptable amount of alcohol, and it's reducing it significantly.
Wow.
And so brands are really starting to reevaluate what their offerings are.
Well, and Kate Faulkner, again from Zero Proof Collective, mentioned that there is a winemaker that she worked with on an event, and he is actually making a non-alcoholic version as well because he sees the market value.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's just tough. It's tough to make a good one.
all right, James just said we served non-alcoholic wine at NACE this year. It wasn't great quality, but it was great conversation.
that unfortunately seems about right. It's a very complicated process. Sorry for the children in the background. It's the dealcoholization process that is expensive and time consuming. And I think it's something that a winemaker has to make a conscientious choice about because of the fact that they only get their crops once a year, right? They grow all year and they have their crush season. And they know that if they have a really good bottle of wine, they can potentially get $200 for it. And at this stage in the game, no one's making good enough wine that anyone's going to go plop $200 down for a alcohol-free bottle of wine. So it's tough, but it sounds like it's starting to happen because the rest of the marketplace is signaling you need to invest in this or you're going to be leaving money on the table.
Well, and the wine market is not doing very well right now, but it goes back to that conversation that you and I had before the show. Yes, I make wine and I make non-alcoholic wine. Or yes, I make Okay. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
My impromptu thing on New Year's Eve. Yeah. Everybody go get a bottle of Spiritless, go get a bottle of Ritual, go get a case of athletic beer, and make sure you have that with you tonight when you're celebrating. Make sure everybody feels included.
Well, you can start. Interesting fact, by the way, about non-alcoholic beer and post-workout. The polyphenols from the hops,
Mm-hmm.
the green stuff they put in beer, incredible anti-inflammatories in them.
Oh, okay.
So a non-alcoholic beer after a workout is actually a great thing. So just a fun fact that non-alcoholic beer not only is beneficial on a lot of other levels, but it's actually positive for you when it comes to inflammation from post-workout.
Awesome. Well, that's good to know.
Yeah. Fun fact.
Fun fact. All right. So I want to, David T. Stevens, my friend, thank you so much for being on the Eating at a Meeting episode, the very last impromptu one of the year. And
I sure hope so.
I know. Yeah. And the episode, which is Beyond the Bar, is live on Apple and Spotify today on the Eating at a Meeting podcast. So go look for that. And if you want David and I to come speak at your event to talk about this, please have us. We are a dynamic duo.
What a workshop, right? Like The thing is if you're an agency that has a team of planners, or even your internal team that has a team of planners, and you just want to work through how to add more wellness into your events, and how to stack the deck for your team so that attendees leave more energized than exhausted, we should come visit you.
Yeah, we should. I talk about the food and beverage side altogether. He talks about wellness combined with the food and beverage. So we're a good tag team. Yeah. So until then, everybody stay safe and eat well. And James, it is always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much, my friend.
Thanks for listening to the Eating at a Meeting podcast, where every meal matters. I'm Tracy Stuckrath, your food and beverage inclusion expert. Call me and let's get started right now on creating safe and inclusive food and beverage experiences for your customers, your employees, and your communities. Share the podcast with your friends and colleagues at our Eating at a Meeting Facebook page and on all podcast platforms. To learn more about me and receive valuable information, go to tracystuckrath.com. And if you'd like more information on how to feed engagement, nourish inclusion, and bolster your bottom line, then visit eatingatameeting.com.